think it is important to be able to identify these problems, because if we do not know what they are, how can we even begin to be start solving them or overcoming them? Which actually leads us to our next question, which is, what are the challenges that are getting in the way of your work and life balance, and what steps are you taking to overcome them?
Okay, so
So we
let's
can
play
play
the
the next
answer
one.
video.
I think a lot of artists face difficulties where we have work at the studio or for study, and we want to do personal work too, of course, and also to keep pushing ourselves with our personal or portfolio work. But I've had an issue, which I think a lot of people at this stage have, where maybe I get too much into my own head, partly from spending a lot of time alone on my art as well. And when you're at such an early stage of your career, you keep feeling like maybe you don't have enough time, and you're filled with so much uncertainty of, am I actually going to make it anywhere? Am I ever going to do anything resembling my dream job? But the fact is that if you constantly try to force yourself to output, you definitely work less efficiently, because you think, I'm dedicating all of my time to this, when really, if you give yourself, say, a few hours, but you're concentrating fully, then you'll probably produce better work in that time. I think the way that I'm trying to overcome my difficulties is putting things into my routine, such as I read for an hour in the evening, or after work, I spend some time walking around by myself and just getting a coffee by myself before heading home, or spending time with my friends. I think also trying to gain an awareness of how and when you work best, or how to adjust your lifestyle so you have better energy levels. Some people work best in the morning, some in the evening. And I know personally I like to go to sleep a bit earlier and wake up quite early and kind of chill for a bit before the day properly begins. So I think it just depends on each person what's best for them.
There are some things that get in the way of my perfect work-life balance. The ultimate one is my lack of skill. To have a good income that pays my monthly expense and big enough to do some investments, I still need to hone my skills a lot more. A stable skill to make consistent artwork is a must for me. So I'm working a lot to make a lot of good artworks with consistency right now. I'm doing a lot of drawing every day. I believe this is something I need to do for the next few years straight to have the good consistency which is needed to achieve my version of the perfect work-life balance. By having a good consistency, it means that I understand my standard, my work pace, my reference, and my goal. Understanding those aspects will give me time to do another activities such as working out and hanging out with friends, but still having a good income.
I'd say the biggest challenge for me is that feeling of guilt I feel every time I'm not working. Even while hanging out with friends, I still think about work every time, every single time, and actually do the work after hanging out, actually do the work after that until morning to cope with the guilt. I feel like a really lazy person if I don't do something productive or really related to work. And what changes and or what helps me to cope with that feeling or to mitigate that challenge is my health. Actually, my doctor said to me that I should take some rest from work. I should do more exercise and take care of my body, or my health will deteriorate because I'm at risk now. Yeah, so I kind of have no choice there. So yeah, I stopped working so much and I do some exercise every now and then. Yeah, sometimes you need some real strong factors to make you stop and rethink everything you did. For me, it's health.
The steps I'm taking is definitely that I took since last year is definitely going full freelance. I was doing freelance while I was working in my previous company, actually since I started. But I believe in order for me to start doing more movie work and direct my own stuff, I believe that I had to go full freelance in order to manage my own time, and that also goes into developing my own studio, so which I kind of have at the moment. But I'm also working on my own animation, my own short movie, which is extremely hard. It's extremely hard because I've never done one, and I've been inspired by a good friend of mine from my past company, Cryotech Ivan, which he did an amazing short movie by himself. And another artist like Ashtor. These artists really inspired me a lot to do bold moves in your life, as hard as they seem, and to really fight for your goals, as hard as they look. And obviously, it's been extremely hard. I've been trying to do this for the past 6 months, and I've been finding a lot of technical issues. But I believe that once I finish this, as long as it took, I believe that the next one, I will have a more holistic approach, a better understanding of pipeline and process. And I think it's going to be faster, like the same way you do your first big painting takes a long time, and after a while you can do it like in a day. So it's definitely been an interesting experience.
Okay, great, awesome. And it looks like we have quite a few comments to read out, actually. Quite a few people sharing what they have, their experiences with work and life balance, and some people also having fun in the chat as well. And yeah, it's great to see that Leo is in the chat as well. So he's one of the people on the artist panel right now. And I think it'll be... I think let's actually read out some of the comments in the chat as well and see what people have had to say so far. So one of the questions that we've gotten so far is by Xylin, who says, I'm not sure, but if you don't have someone who dictates your work, isn't it even harder to create a work-life balance with only yourself in charge? And I would say yes, but at the same time, I don't think that it's something that someone should undertake as when they're quite young in their career, depending on the person. But there's some people that are definitely not as disciplined, and as a result, if you give them a lot of freedom, it doesn't necessarily mean they'll be more productive. And some people might even work better in a studio environment. So I would say that if you are one of those kinds of people, it'll be a good idea to actually start working in a studio first, get some experience, build up your self-discipline before, I suppose, taking off the training wheels and letting you off by yourself.
I totally agree. And as Silva mentioned, the steps that he's taking to the challenge, to overcome the challenge, is actually by doing freelance instead of a studio job. I think it's for exactly the reason that you said, because he has the discipline from FZD and also from being in a AAA studio. So he's able to take on being a freelancer because as a freelancer, he has the flexibility of time and the ability to choose what his schedule is like. Yeah.
And it's definitely not something that I would have been able to do as well when I was starting out my career. But I'll be a lot more confident to do that. And the next comment is by Noax, who says, I wake up at 5 p.m. PUBG takes up all of my time. Hey, when PUBG is life, you know. I can understand that, man. I definitely was like that. But for me, it was World of Warcraft. And Vyuki also has shared his experiences, saying that doing school, part-time, freelance, self-study, online class, etc., making my own portfolio can really be a mess. I don't have enough time. Then just remembering about a lot of stuff that I need to do, making me just want to slack off. And yeah, I think that would be the problem of overwhelm, basically, is that when you try to juggle too many things at once. And, you know, how would you approach it, Ken, when you have so many things? And at one point, especially like leading up to your wedding, you said that you had so many things to do.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe you can share some of your advice of how you got through that.
Oh, yeah. Well, the thing is, when you have too many things going on at once, it's definitely going to be very hectic. So one of the techniques that I'd recommend is time blocking, which I think Kay kind of touched upon it a little bit. It's by assigning time slots for your different activities. So for example, maybe one of Kay's example is reading a book. You put that into your schedule for 1 hour, and then after that 1 hour ended, you do your next schedule. But my personal tip is to not leave, but to add extra 15 minutes between each task. So you get a good chunk of break between each task that you've accomplished. And that way you don't feel like you have multiple successive tasks that just keeps coming and coming. And
I suppose
that's
you can say
the
it's
biggest.
kind of like a little checkpoint, right, in between.
Exactly. It's just it just helps you kind of relax your mind a bit instead of working all day, all the time. That's
Yeah.
probably the biggest game changer for me in terms of scheduling. But the funny thing is nowadays I try to keep my schedule a lot more open and just have a few checklists of the things that I need to
Yeah.
do. Maybe one of the reasons is because I feel more confident in my own ability of managing my time. So I don't need such a rigorous schedule.
And this actually does tie back to what people have been saying as well. And one of the things that Joshua has mentioned, and also Kay, is the idea of a routine. And one thing that Joshua mentioned, which I thought was really interesting, is and I agree with, is consistency is the key to understanding yourself better. Because the thing is, when you're trying something out only once, let's just say you've gotten great advice from someone that to try something new, but you've only tried it for one day, for example, and you tell yourself after doing it for a day and you fail at doing it, and you tell yourself, oh, it's not meant for me. I failed, right? So maybe it's something that I shouldn't be doing. However, I really do think that there are some things that you can only really know if it works for you or not after trying it out for a while. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, to build a habit, it takes around 3 to 4 weeks. And I usually try to give myself a little bit of a testing period, You know how sometimes on social media they have like, drawing challenges, or maybe going 1 month without something, like No Nut November and things like that.
Oh my
So
god.
in this case, maybe for yourself, it would be to try to maybe, okay, what if I cut out Instagram or social media for a month? Maybe that can really help me out in the long run. But maybe you'll realize that without that, you're a lot less productive somehow. So you won't know that though unless you try it out. So I really do think that Joshua is onto something here, where you have to be quite consistent at something first. And I was the same as well. I wouldn't say that I'm a very disciplined person before, but with the help of some of the advices that I've gotten, it has helped me out a lot in sorting all these things out. But for one thing, so if I had to answer the question myself, one of the things that's getting in the way for me is my own physical limitations. And for that would mean just the amount of sleep that I can, as little sleep as I can get away with. I tried sleeping at a consistent time and waking up at a certain time as well, and trying to decrease that amount of sleep that I get. But it just gets to a point where my body is just not cooperating with me anymore, and I'm not as efficient with my time. So that is a big thing for me. I've realized that I need at least around 7 to 7.5 hours of sleep. Any less, I start to crash a little bit. And I think Leo also mentioned the idea of discipline, or a while back, and I do agree with that, is that it is important to be able to keep up consistency with discipline, and I certainly lack that sometimes. with the things that are not as desirable for me, or something that's really difficult.
Sorry, I laughed.
I-
I just couldn't
I-
contain it.
Are you reading the chat right now?
Yeah. So 8-bit wizard or Shang Lam, he,
Ooh,
he wrote
calling
No
me
Not
out by name.
November, followed by Destroy Dick December. I'm sorry.
Perfectly balanced as all things should be.
Yeah. But sorry, go on. Go on.
Yeah, that's pretty much it actually. And actually, another
So
thing
so
as well.
actually, what
Hmm?
what steps are you taking to overcome that challenge of needing that amount of sleep, or I don't know what your
Uh,
challenge is?
So for me, what I've been trying to overcome that with is, well, I think one of the big things that has really helped me out recently is actually meditation. And what meditation has really helped me out to do is not necessarily trying to find or create peace in everyday situation, but in a sense, it's allowing myself to be able to accept whatever circumstances or situation that's going on around me, whether that's mental or physical, and learning to work within them. So in a sense, it's like making all of those conditions my element. So rather than reacting so much to my emotions, so it can cover a lot of things. And one of the things that the people in the panel mentioned is that they feel guilt of not being able to do work. And with my obsessive personality as well, that was the case for me. But meditation has helped me to realize that, the thought patterns that lead to that kind of decision making, because that is a reaction to those emotions. But in being able to identify it and being mindful of it, I'm able to actually just say, no, I'm not going to actually follow my emotions this time, and I'm going to do what I really need to do. And that covers a whole bunch of issues.
That's interesting. So your meditation is basically a time where you just try to internalize all of your actions so far,
Yes.
and then in a way come to terms with it.
Oh, definitely.
And
And it's something that I also couple with my practice of journaling, because meditation, I think, is good at revealing some of the thoughts, I suppose, that are hidden inside of me. But with journaling, I'm able to do it or solve the problems in a more logical fashion, I suppose, like actually coming up with ways to address some of those problems specifically.
I see.
So yeah, that's the
think,
biggest thing.
Right. And I think as for myself, my biggest challenge is actually, as I mentioned before, the time spent working freelance. And also as a freelancer, I have an inconsistent income. And yeah, and also with the lack of passive income, it's just kind of tough because you have to keep working and working to get the minimum amount of income that you need for that month, right? So I guess for the steps that I'm taking to overcome the challenge is I've been giving it some thought, and I have some ideas, but it's nothing concrete yet. But one of the thoughts is maybe like forming some sort of a studio or an artist guild.
Ooh,
So in a way I
sounds
can,
fancy.
yeah, but that's just one of the thoughts that I have. I mean, there are things like things that are more directly money related, such as bank deposits or government bonds and things like that. But that's a totally different topic. But yeah, yeah.
let's leave
So
that for another time.
it all boils down to wanting to work less freelance, but still gain more than enough income. And I guess I can achieve that by optimizing my workflow efficiency and also by improving my skill set. So
Yeah, for sure.
that's,
I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay.
And we've also got
So
quite a few comments in the chat as well.
yeah.
But some of the there's definitely, it's great to see you guys are having fun. But just to stay on topic and move on to the next one, we'll just read out some of those that are more related to the discussion. So Leo also mentioned in the chat as well that I mostly browse Facebook 90% of the time. And yeah, I agree. It can be very difficult sometimes to get distracted by something that's on the same area as your workspace. And Smoke Kipper also says less direction, work takes longer. And I agree. And in a way, if you imagine the effort and focus that you have as a direct amount of energy or force, the more dispersed it is, the weaker that it is. Whereas sometimes you just need a one strong shot in just one direction in order to break through. And yeah, and Burrito also says, I don't know what to answer because I don't know what my life is right now. And that is fine. I do think people have their own period for self-discovery. And I would say, and hopefully from this conversation that you'll have a few things that you can try out for yourself. And maybe with enough experimentation and discipline that you'll find out what works for you. And I think that's really the essence of it, is just knowing yourself, as a lot of the people in the panel have said, is that everyone works differently. So in time, I'm sure you will as well. So don't feel so discouraged by that.
Yeah, I think it's really important to know that everyone's journey is different and everyone's pace of life is different. So don't compare what you're going through with other people, but compare it directly, but instead pick on what aspects that's relatable to you, and then and then use it to better your own schedule or your life.
Definitely. Just pick and mix, like a buffet, This should be quite fun, like an experiment of sorts. You're self-experimenting, just to see what works best for you. And yeah, I do think it'll be worth it in the end. So yeah, stick through it, Burrito.